I like to travel and see new things, go to new places. I don't really like traveling and what it takes to get there, especially if it involves getting on a plane. You see, when you're 6'4", it's not a very comfortable ride. It doesn't matter where you sit, that even if you sit in maybe the Comfort Plus, forget first class, but the Comfort Plus there, you think, oh, I'm going to get this seat with a lot more room. I don't think it's any wider, I'll put it that way. Just because I'm tall means I'm probably a little wider too. And also it means that every other person who's 6'4" and 6'8" is probably sitting next to you, so you're even a little bit more crammed into this little spot. But it was especially apparent when we went on the pilgrimage last year to Fatima and Lourdes and Spain. And on the way home, I was in the airport in Germany. I went up to the counter and I asked the attendant if it would be possible to make sure I had an emergency row seat or a seat with a little bit more room. And he's like, oh, I got you all taken care of, no worries. So I walked away from the counter. There was kind of a long line. I walked away from the counter and I looked at the boarding pass and it said that I was in row 52. Now, I didn't even know that row 52 existed, to be honest with you, but apparently it does. And so I said, okay, I guess this will be fine. I didn't know what it would mean. For the next couple hours, I was a little anxious, I have to admit. And sure enough, I get on the plane and row 52 is the last row. And I thought, oh, this is going to be probably one miserable 9 hours on this flight, but let's just see how it goes. But what I learned was that nobody wants to sit in row 52. So it's actually a really good seat, maybe one of the best kept secrets, because when you sit there, there's a space between you and maybe somebody a couple seats away from you. And also, he did fix me up pretty good because there was an emergency door right next to me. So there was no people there, and there was a little space, and that meant about every hour or at my leisure, I could get up and do some aerobics and move around, and nobody was watching me, so it didn't really make a difference. And it actually was one of the best plane flights that I've ever had. Coming from Frankfurt, it was wonderful because, I was pretty rested, at the time I felt like I had gotten up and moved around. Now, there was one thing that was a little bit challenging, though, and that's that when you're in the back of the plane, it means you're right next to this little room called a bathroom, okay? And that means that, there's a lot of traffic in and out, but every time someone kind of comes out, there's like this just very unique aroma. I don't know quite how to put it, that you only get like on a plane. There's just something about it that, you say, well, this is kind of unique. So, but I was prepared because before I went on the trip, I went to Target. And they have this whole, I love Target because they have all of the little trial sizes and all the little sample kind of sizes. And something prompted me, I don't know what it was, to buy the little trial size of Febreze, okay? So for whatever reason, I got that. And I said, well, I don't know. I really didn't use it. All the rooms smelled pretty good from the places we stayed at. I didn't need to use it. But I tell you, it came in very handy on that flight because every time that there was a little bit of that unique aroma, I just took it out and I went click, 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 click. And the stewardess got a real laugh out of it, I think, for 9 hours worth. I went through almost the whole bottle, actually. But I will tell you that it was actually a great seat too, because when we landed in Orlando, I don't know what it is when a plane lands and everybody, like the minute that bell rings, everybody's up, can't wait to get out of the plane. Well, guess what? You're probably not going anywhere very quickly. So there's no rush to get up and to get off, and especially when you're in row 52. So, I said, well, I have a long time before I'm going to get off this plane, probably 20 minutes at least. So it was a great opportunity to go into that bathroom, brush my teeth, wash my face, comb my hair, so that by the time I went through customs, I was looking great. I got to tell you, everybody else was kind of haggard and tired looking, but I was looking pretty good. I thought, wow, this is wonderful. So, and it also told me that, I felt really good about myself, that I survived the 9-hour plane trip in the back of the plane, and and I did pretty well about it. And it made me realize that, even what we might perceive as kind of some suffering might not be the worst thing. That look for some of the positives and concentrate on that, and it turns out to be a real pleasurable experience. Now, I will tell you that's what Jesus is talking about in the gospel today. He's confronted with how many people are getting into heaven. And he said back, he doesn't answer that question. There was a fixation at the time with people of how many people are going to be saved. But, notice there's no number given here. Later on in the book of Revelation, there's like an infinite type of number given. But in this particular one, there's no number given. And so Jesus instead puts it back on the people and said, guess what? There's going to be accountability. Guess what? Not everybody's getting in. Guess what? You might need to work a little bit at this because the gate is narrow. And there's going to be a lot of people coming from all places to get through that narrow gate. So you might want to make sure that you're ready to go through. And I think that word narrow is very unique, very specific, a very clever word to use when describing this gate. Because what Jesus is saying, it's not going to be a rush going through, but God is going to take his time with each of us. He's going to take his time. After all, he loved us so much that he created us. He loved us so much that, he put us on this earth as an expression of himself. So when we get to heaven, is there going to be this big rush to get in? No, he's probably going to want to maybe talk to us a little bit. Maybe have like a nice conversation. Maybe make sure that we're really ready to get in. And because that the gate is narrow, it means you're not going to be able to get through very easily with a bunch of stuff. I'm not talking physical things because it's a ridiculous thought that you would take things with you to heaven, material things. But I'm also thinking that maybe the word narrow is used because we have to shed ourselves of certain qualities that don't belong in heaven. And that would be qualities of jealousy, hatred, apathy, maybe of arrogance. And perhaps the thought here is we need to leave our ego at the gate, to leave it at the door. Because when you get into heaven, we're all going to be the same, obviously, in God's eyes. There's no differentiation between people. There's no going to be jockeying for greater positions, as there is sometimes competition here on earth. But rather, the Lord's going to look at us with such great love, and there's not going to be this desire to say, I want to be better than the other person. I want to be more favorable in God's eyes. If we've made it through the narrow gate, we're all favored. We're all loved. And it might take some a little longer to get through than others because we have to cleanse ourselves and purify ourselves. And yes, there's people coming from all over. So really, this is saying to this gentleman who asked the question, how many are going to be saved? Will it be few? Jesus is saying, you know what? You need to worry about it because a lot of people are going to want to get in. And guess what? It's going to take some time in order to get there. And there may be some suffering along the way. In the book of the letter to the Hebrews, our second reading today, it speaks about how there's going to be some who are disciplined. That's almost like suffering. There's going to be disciplining. There's going to be a need for better patience. And so really we can switch the word discipline to suffering and say, well, through suffering we will become righteous. Through a sense of discipline, through a sense of some challenges, through difficulties. And all of the people trying to get into heaven, they're all going to be coming with their baggage, with their history. And some of that suffering, it helps us to get through the narrow gate. For instance, if you maybe have a problem with self-centeredness, then try taking care of somebody who is ill. That would be a good thing. Maybe your elderly parent is living with you and it's not your choice. Guess what? It's going to make you a lot less self-centered. Perhaps you have a problem with arrogance. Maybe there's a need for more humility. I can assure you that if you ever lost your job or had financial difficulties or came down with an illness of some sort, it's not that we wish that on anybody, but the positive of it is that arrogance is going to go away. You're going to become a lot more humble because of those circumstances. So that's why when there's suffering on earth and people say, well, I don't know why this happens to me. Why do I feel like all the bad things happen to me? Sometimes it is allowed to happen, or God permits it really to happen because he knows it's going to help us. It will refine us. It helps us to be better people. I look at my own life in a personal way. My parents both passed away when they were pretty young. They were in their early 60s. And I look back, I was in my mid-30s. I never thought I would lose both parents in my mid-30s. But I can tell you that it helped me to become a lot more understanding of people who have suffered loss in their life. And I can't look at it like, oh, poor me, I lost my parents. They never got to see me. They saw me as a priest. They never got to see me, in my own parish as a pastor. Or they loved coming here to Annunciation. They would have loved to have seen the new church. They never got to see those things. I don't really think about it that way. Rather, I say, well, hopefully because of that experience, maybe I've been refined. And maybe in my own helping other people through mourning or through funerals, through bereavement, maybe I can be a better priest because of that. So again, it's taking the negative or the suffering and making it into something a little bit more positive. So today, think of maybe the negative in your life, some kind of suffering maybe that's going on, and you might wonder, well, God, why is this happening to me? I can assure you, He's trying to help you to grow. He's helping you to perhaps be a better person, so that when you stand there at the narrow gate, you will have shed a lot of the human qualities that are not desirable or that really are not permissible for heaven. So a little bit of that wait time could be a good thing. A little bit of maybe sitting in the back seat of the plane for 9 hours, made me really realize this is 9 hours of my life. Big deal. It's only 9 hours. What does that mean? In 9 hours, I'm going to get off of this plane and it's going to be okay. And I won't even remember it, and ended up being a good experience. So we prioritize that suffering. No need for a lot of drama. In your life, say, this is the no drama zone here in my soul. And I'm not going to allow it to overtake me, because God has a plan inevitably for me. And He wants me to be there. It just may take a little bit of time to get through. And I may need to let go of some things before I make it through. And just remember that, as He tells us numerous times, the last will be first and the first will be last. And being the last isn't always the worst thing either, because that also helps us to develop the gift of patience. And that's something that inevitably, when the plane lands in heaven and we're all trying to get out, you're going to be there for a long time, for all eternity. So there's no rush. So let God do His work, and let us do our work here in heaven to be the best we can be when we finally arrive at our eternal destination.